Lois and Bonnie have been talking a lot about the Me Too movement recently. I'm curious as to what that is.
Hey Peter, the Me Too movement is a social movement that raises awareness about sexual harassment and sexual violence. It encourages victims to share their experiences, support other victims, and push for accountability and change in society.
Well, when did it actually begin, and why was it created?
Well, Brian, the movement was initially founded by activist and survivor Tarana Burke in 2006. She wanted to create pathways for support and healing for people who had experienced sexual violence. It remained fairly small until October of 2017, when actress Alyssa Milano encouraged women on Twitter to post the phrase "Me Too" if they had been harassed or assaulted. Within 24 hours, Facebook reported more than 12 million reactions to that hashtag. The movement gained wide momentum after allegations against film producer Harvey Weinstein became public.
So what injustice was the movement trying to challenge?
Stewie, the movement challenged the idea that women should stay silent about sexual harassment and assault. It aimed to raise awareness, change society's perception of survivors, hold perpetrators accountable, and work toward preventing sexual violence overall.
Wait, was this just a Hollywood thing?
Not quite, Peter. It started receiving attention in Hollywood, but it quickly became clear that this was happening to women everywhere and in every industry. Women of color and those with lower incomes were often especially affected because they had fewer protections and resources available to them.
So, how many people were actually impacted?
Well, Brian, the numbers are pretty shocking. Studies show that 4 in 5 women experience sexual harassment or assault during their lifetime, and around 37% report experiencing it in the workplace. The movement highlighted how widespread the issue really was.
Every movement has leaders. Who are the major figures behind this one?
Like I said earlier, Tarana Burke is widely credited as the founder. She first used the phrase "Me Too" through her nonprofit work to help survivors feel less alone. Alyssa Milano helped bring the movement to global attention in 2017 through social media. Later, Burke founded Me Too International in 2018 and continues to lead the organization today.
All right, so how did the movement actually spread? What methods of activism did they use?
Peter, the movement used both modern and traditional forms of activism. The most significant was social media activism. The hashtag gave millions of survivors a platform to share their stories publicly and safely. Even simple actions like sharing or retweeting helped spread awareness. As a support group, it led to organized protests, legal advocacy, and increased public pressure on governments and businesses.
Can you give an example of those protests?
Yeah. Brian, in 2018, McDonald's workers organized a major multi-state strike to protect sexual harassment policies. Workers covered their mouths with tape and held signs displaying #MeToo, connecting online activism with real-world protests.
That's a good overview of the movement itself, but how does it connect to human rights?
The Me Too movement is closely connected to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The UDHR states that all people are equal in dignity and rights and should not face discrimination based on sex. The movement was essentially demanding that these rights actually be enforced for women.
So which specific rights were being violated?
Several. Article 1 guarantees equal dignity for all people. Article 3 the right to security of person. Article 5 freedom from degrading treatment. And Article 23 the right to safe working conditions. The movement fought to defend all of these rights.
Why was there such a gap between those rights and reality?
For decades, sexual harassment was often treated as something women simply had to tolerate. When powerful individuals could act without consequences, it showed that the rights promised in the UDHR were not being applied equally. The movement forced society to confront that gap.
We've also studied the Sustainable Development Goals. Does Me Too connect to any of them?
100%. It most directly connects to Sustainable Goal 5, which focuses on gender equality. SDG 5 aims to eliminate discrimination and violence against women, which were central goals of the movement.
Is the world making good progress on that goal?
Well, progress has been slower than many hoped. Recent United Nations reports suggest that many gender equality targets are unlikely to be filled by 2030. That's one reason why movements like Me Too remain important. Legal reforms alone are not enough without broader cultural change.
Does it affect any other goals?
Yeah, it does. It also connects to Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which promotes decent work and safe workplaces. Sustainable Development Goal number 10, which focuses on reducing inequality, and Sustainable Development Goal number 16, which promotes justice and strong institutions. Addressing gender-based violence can improve workplaces, strengthen legal systems, and reduce inequality at the same time.
What about Catholic social teaching? How does the movement fit with those principles?
The movement connects strongly with several Catholic social teaching principles. The first is human dignity. Every person is made in the image of God and deserves respect. which sexual violence directly violates.
What other principles does it violate?
Another principle is solidarity. When survivors share their stories and support one another by saying Me Too, they are standing together and supporting each other. The movement also reflects the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable. Programs like the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund were created to support lower-income women and women of color who often lacked access to legal resources.
Does it connect to the common good as well?
Absolutely. The common good teaches that society cannot truly flourish when large groups of people are being harmed or silenced. The movement challenged workplaces, institutions, and even the church to protect the dignity of all people and create safer environments.
All right, but was the movement actually effective?
In many ways, yes. One measure of effectiveness is whether laws and policies changed. And in the United States, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act removed tax deductions for certain sexual harassment settlements involving non-disclosure agreements. Other countries introduced workplace reforms and stronger protection against harassment. In China, anti-harassment regulations came into effect in 2023.
What about public opinion?
Public opinion changed quite significantly. Many powerful individuals faced consequences after survivors came forward. More importantly, many survivors felt supported and believed in ways that seemed impossible only a few years earlier.
Did conditions actually improve in workplaces?
To some extent, many organizations updated policies and began taking complaints more seriously. However, challenges remain. Only about 15% of workplace harassment cases are formally reported, largely because people still fear retaliation or damage to their careers.
Did the movement inspire activism in other countries?
For sure. Similar campaigns emerged around the world. France had hashtag Balance Ton Port, Sweden had hashtag Sista Brifen, Italy had hashtag Quella Volta C'è, Turkey had hashtag Sande Anla, and activists in China even created the rice bunny symbol to avoid government censorship.
Were there any unintended consequences?
Unfortunately, yes. Some critics argue that a cultural backlash developed. Some men became hesitant to interact with female colleagues out of fear of accusations, while others used debates about cancel culture to dismiss legitimate accountability efforts. There was also some hostility directed toward men in general, which often made productive conversations more difficult.
After everything you've learned, what's the biggest lesson future activists can learn from Me Too?
One of the biggest lessons is that real change requires more than exposing individual wrongdoers. It also requires institutional reform. The movement showed the power of collective storytelling and demonstrated how social media can amplify voices that were previously ignored. It also taught us that the marginalized voices need to remain at the center of the conversation, something Tarana Burke has emphasized from the beginning.
Well, there you have it. Thanks for explaining the Me Too movement.
Surprisingly educational.
Yeah, I actually learned something today.
No problem, you guys. Just all in today's work.